So thanks to all of you for joining us today. So our presentation today is the bioregional framework for the Saanich Peninsula. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dennis Carlson. I'm the president of the Sydney Community Association. And if you're not familiar with us, we are an organization that represents the views and concerns of our members on a variety of topics that relate to Sydney. But we also look for opportunities to provide information that we think will be of interest to our membership, and today is a good example of that. The Draft Sydney OCP, the official community plan, we expect to be public this coming March, and we will be paying close attention to the environmental component of that. And North Saanich and Central Saanich are also drafting their OCP, so it's fitting that our topic for today is the bioregional framework for the Saanich Peninsula. Most of you, I think, know Bob. He's going to be our presenter today. He's the coordinator of the Saanich Peninsula Environmental Coalition. And I've had a chance to have a few conversations with Bob, and it's very apparent to me that he has a wealth of experience and knowledge, both as a biologist and an educator. So with that said, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Bob. Take it away, Bob.
Anyway, thank you, everyone. And as I say, I want to talk today about living on the Saanich Peninsula as if it were home. It's a theme that Pharaoh talks about a lot. And I think that the work we do at the Community Association and the work that we do as individuals, it's all pretty vital to the future of the Saanich Peninsula. But thank you, Dennis, to the work you do and to the work that the Sydney Community Association does and is going to be doing into the future. For some of you, what I'll be saying today would be new. For some of you, it will be an update and a reinforcement of the process. So I'll speak about 10 to 12 minutes and just outline what the thinking is behind a bioregional framework and why we believe this approach is important. And then at the end, I'll do a summary about a few things you can do to help, and then hope to have a conversation. So the work our coalition does acknowledges that the territory of the Saanich Peninsula is unceded and that the inherent rights and title of the Saanich First Nations remain undefined. We recognize the Saanich have historic and continuing ties to the lands and waters, and their cultures, traditions, and practices are intimately connected to the Saanich Peninsula. And without having the Saanich Nation involved in this process, it would be pretty difficult to achieve success. So their involvement is really, really fundamental. And you can see that the Saanich Leadership Council is a member. So this is kind of who we are. And you can see from the list of people, it represents a range of local groups and individuals. It's a good span of interests related to the environment, to society, and to the economy. And we meet regularly every 4 to 6 weeks in that range, and have really good conversations, and we move forward and operate by consensus. The whole coalition operates within the framework of respect for the Saanich people and within the context of the changing climate. And there's 3 kind of overarching programs that are inherent part of our purpose. One, we want to have the Saanich Peninsula begin to be recognized as a bioregion rather than 3 separate communities. We want to encourage the municipalities of Central Saanich, North Saanich, and Sydney to align their environmental policies and work together in achieving those goals. And we feel it's really important to promote ecological sustainability as a means for ensuring the future environment of the Saanich Peninsula. As I said earlier, it's all within the context and the interest of trying to live here on the Saanich Peninsula as if it were home. So why now? Why are we doing this? Well, we're building on the work of the 2018 Sydney Summit, and Steve Duck, who's on this presentation, who's listening in, was quite involved in that. So we're building on the work of the Sydney Summit and the consensus that was reached there that there should be more done to support the health of the Saanich Peninsula, and the three municipal governments should work collaboratively among themselves and with the Saanich people to accomplish this goal of ecological health. Each of the three municipalities are striking out and currently reviewing their official community plans. So the timing is really good. Each of the municipalities is reviewing their OCP, and if we can get them to align and work together, there's a really good opportunity here. We have 3 mayors and councils that are open to the concept of this bioregional approach, which is really encouraging. And each of the councils have passed a resolution of support in principle. And Adam Olson's really been really supportive and really good on this. And so Adam's been good a couple times. One time he's brought together a larger community of about 20 people to have a discussion. And he's been able to arrange meetings with the mayors and those kinds of conversations. So, and Adam really understands the concept of working together. And plus, a real bonus, I think, because we have a community that loves where they live and they want to keep it that way, and that's extremely helpful. The bioregional framework is 3 key principles. They're each equally important, and without all 3, we fail. So the ecosystem integrity, the conserving, the protecting, the maintaining, and the conductivity across the landscape is 1. The jurisdictional collaboration and how important it is to the 3 municipalities work together to support sustainable practices. And then the community perspective is key too. We believe it was only with strong public engagement, support, and action that the Saanich Peninsula's natural beauty and natural environment will be protected. Conductivity is really key. And so this conductivity is fundamental to the environmental health and future of the Saanich Peninsula. And the CDF there, that's a coastal Douglas fir. And so on the Saanich Peninsula, we're within the coastal Douglas fir ecozone. And the coastal Douglas fir is one of the most endangered and threatened landscapes in the whole province. So conductivity is really important. And the fact that we're in the coastal Douglas fir kind of brings that together really closely. And conductivity talks about the freedom for animals to move around, to support their ability to gather food and to live. Talks about continuity of habitat. And so the wildlife are free to move. And this continuity of habitat is in tree canopy, it's in landscape, it's in those kinds of things. And conductivity on the landscape and having animals move around is also really important to the survival of rare and endangered species. And you can see the conductivity can be, it can be east-west, it can be north-south, and the connection between land and water is really important. And so this conductivity across the landscape is really an important part of being a bioregion. And one of the things we're trying to do is to identify, eliminate, and modify the barriers that don't allow this conductivity. So the key messages that we're working on are that Sydney commit to working together with Central and North Saanich to integrate the principles of bioregional planning into their OCP. It's fundamental that this process occur while respecting the Saanich people. As a priority within the context of climate change, you have to maintain the natural environment. The fact that ecological health and human health are interconnected. Human health is directly linked to the health of the environment. And I don't know whether people really thoroughly understand the importance of that interconnection. And the other really key point is we have to enable the public to be involved, to put forward their ideas and to exchange their views in an open and transparent manner. So how can you help? Well, there are a number of ways you can help with this conversation. You can learn more, follow up, and register, and join the discussions at placespeak.com, Bioregional Framework. That's kind of the portal that we're using for this conversation. You can sign up to receive updates and news from us at Saanich Peninsula Coalition at gmail.com. And then, so that kind of keeps you up to date, but I think that being actively involved would be really, really helpful. If you really believe in this concept and aligning, the municipalities working together, write to your mayor and council. Tell them to adopt the principles of bioregional framework in the renewed official community planning process. And if you go to Place Speak, you'll see that there are templates there that we've set up to help you and enable you to send these letters with the emails and everything. And as Dennis was saying earlier, take part in your municipality's official community planning revision. And this process is really important to ensure that your interests are considered. The future path for the Saanich Peninsula is strongly linked to the vision, views, principles, bylaws that are all fundamental part of the OCP process. So please engage in the OCP process, support Dennis in the work of the Sydney Community Association. And remember that you want to live here as if it were your home. So thank you for your support and your interest, and look forward to working with you on this important initiative. And I look forward to supporting and helping out with the Sydney Community Association. And if you want to get more information, this is the way you can contact me. And that was the presentation and the overview I thought I'd present. And so glad to take any questions, or if people have got any queries about what I was talking about. And I guess I will stop share. Would that work, Dennis?
Yes, please. Perfect. So I have a question or a comment, and this is when we get into the nitty-gritties of OCPs. And as somebody who uses this daily, policies are nice, but the implementation and action items are really where the rubber hits the road. And one suggestion and or comment I would have is OCPs incorporating wildlife corridors where there's proposed development. So it's something, I don't know if that's been thought about, discussed, but it's something worth maybe considering. So when a greenfield site is being developed, if it's recognized through a biologist's report that there is wildlife moving through that site, it might be worth looking at preserving wildlife corridors in some fashion on those sites, so that you're not stopping wildlife from moving through what is their natural habitat.
Yeah, that's a couple of things there. I agree with you. It's nice to have policies, and it's nice to have kind of the blah blah part of the conversation, but it really, the devil's in the details, and it's the implementation that is really, really key here. And one of the things that as a coalition we're trying to think through is, what's the implementation plan? And I know when we started the coalition conversations a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever it was, we thought there would be that the councils would accept the framing of planning, and that you would see in the OCPs more of a sense of the implementation of what that would look like. And we aren't seeing that. And so one of the things we're thinking about at the coalition and having conversations about is, how do we now kind of, I don't know whether direct isn't the right word, but influence the implementation of the OCPs? And are there certain things in there that are fundamental, development permits, environmentally sensitive areas, like when you get into the nitty gritty, how do we really do this? And the second thing I thought of when you made your comments, Dennis, is this is really important when you come to the tree protection bylaw, because right now we've got 3 kind of separate tree protection bylaws that don't link at all. We need to have one sense of how to work with the treed landscape on the peninsula and think from a canopy and a conductivity point of view. And that's one of the areas where we might be able to have some influence.
Mhm.
I had a question, and it has to do with how specific does the coalition get in terms of dealing with various issues? Like, as an example, right now in Shoal Harbor, Sydney wants to put a dog run, okay, a free dog run, you know, which obviously will have an impact on the birds and the geese and the ducks that use it as migrating area. Is that something that the coalition does, or is it too detailed and the coalition is more at a macro level where they're dealing only with the community plans?
So so it's a both. So the framework itself is a set of principles, and if you look at the document, there are a number of principles in there that are really important, and a number of recommendations that we feel are really key to delivering on that. And a lot of the document is what you might say is at the 2,000-foot level or whatever. It is a higher level document, but the implementation of that document is really important. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, how best to do that. As an example, in relation to the off-leash park, we wrote in, the coalition didn't send in the letter, but one of our member groups, the Friends of Shoal Harbor, sent in a letter speaking against that off-leash park at Rest Haven. And so from a coalition point of view, we were really, really encouraged that our member groups spoke up. And again, you know, if you look at Shoal Harbor Migratory Bird Sanctuary, Jocelyn, who's very involved as a Roberts Bay residents, and Peninsula Streams and Sea Change are working on a conceptual plan to help with the restoration and maintenance of Roberts Bay. So number of our member groups are involved a lot more in the details than the coalition, and we try to support the work of the coalition. So it's a little bit of both, with kind of a thread going back and forth.
Thank you.
Steve, you had a comment question?
Yeah, Bob, thanks very much for your update. It's great to see that it's still continuing along. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing. A question, what sort of engagement have you received, or are you getting any feedback from the staffs of the 3 municipalities? Are they getting engaged at all? Because, you know, sometimes it's top up and bottom up, you know, and engaging both the staff and the councils to take on this perception or this role of leading the work in the municipalities.
Yeah, the staff's fundamental, and again, it would vary from municipality to municipality. Let's just start with Central Saanich. The relationship with Central Saanich is really good, and we're back and forth with the staff all the time, and there's kind of a freedom there to talk. And if they think that I'm kind of loony, they'll say it, and vice versa. So it's a really good exchange with Central Saanich. And if you read their draft document, you can see a lot of what we're talking about is embedded quite deeply in their documents. Sydney, so far, is certainly saying the right stuff, and really quite encouraging. We've had a number of conversations with council, number of conversations with the mayor, and at the staff level, again, it's a really good exchange back and forth. I'm not quite as involved with the Sydney one yet, but we're really looking forward to seeing the draft document, and then we'll be able to kind of figure out how best to work with staff. And so I don't know as much about Sydney. To be frank, with North Saanich, the staff are defensive, if that's the right word. It isn't quite as easy to work with them. I'm on the advisory AWG, the advisory working group or whatever it's called for the North Saanich OCP process. And we meet and we talk and we chat, but I'm not convinced yet that the staff are really open to a new kind of ideas, and the North Saanich process needs a lot of work. But you're absolutely right, Steve, in the sense that a lot of this, the success of this, is going to rise and fall on the approach staff take.
So to that point, Bob, one person you may want to reach out to in the North Saanich staff team is Ben Martin.
Okay.
Ben is the Director of Infrastructure Services, and he came to North Saanich from CRD Environment.
Okay.
And certainly, excuse my bells in the background here. He has been, we've had a lot of interaction with him regarding Sandown and water management there, and have had him on the land. So he may be a good sort of person to have in your back pocket when you're talking to North Saanich. And certainly North Saanich with the OCP is in a state of chaos right now. But if you could reach out to him, you might get some help.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. I've heard that Ben's really a good person to work with, so I'll make that effort. And I think that the North Saanich process, it's just a classic example of how if you get out the gate wrong, you're out the gate wrong, and how perception becomes the truth.
Yeah.
And how difficult it is, once perception becomes the truth, how difficult it is to spin the dime and to try to get a conversation going. It's really unfortunate, but they got out of the gate wrong.
Yeah.
And my sense as a member of the advisory group, it wasn't that bad. I mean, there was some really good stuff in there, and maybe there were a couple sections that weren't worded as well as they should have, but the general thrust of the document, certainly from a coalition's perspective, general thrust of the document was moving in the direction that we thought was really, really good. But from a communications point of view, it got out of the gate wrong.
You have a group of very powerful people there who've been living in the North Saanich for a long time, who are really going to dig in their heels.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the issues. They're quite inflexible about any adjustment that would take them beyond their imaginations.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, but I do have a question too. Do we have anything that was a map that would actually indicate where the environmental corridors are, the places where critters would travel, places that would need a special consideration were there to be a major development or a series of them in that area? Would want to consider that, talking about wildlife corridors.
That's a really good comment, Farrell. And I think the answer is no. We've kind of got it in our head, and there are 2 or 3 maps I've seen on conductivity on the Saanich Peninsula, but I don't think we've got kind of a map that details where the corridors are. And I think that would be really, really helpful to the process.
I have a suggestion.
Mhm.
And I lived in North Saanich for 52 years, and I belonged to a committee that is now defunct, but it was to preserve hedgerows in North Saanich. So they have a file in North Saanich Municipal Hall with perhaps some diagrams and some of the work we did. Hedgerows are very important as corridors.
Yeah.
Oh, Doreen,
Yeah.
that's great information, because I know that one of the things we're trying to do at Sandown is bring back hedgerows because
Well,
of
yeah, definitely.
Oh, I will.
That's
look
what
into
we were trying to do.
Hmm.
But they're very important. But to tell you the truth, city people come out and they want to cut them down. They want a view. They just don't want trees in their window seat.
Well, I've noticed this on Norris Road, which was relatively undeveloped when we moved here 20 years ago. There are, I don't know, maybe 200, 300 meters of hedgerow that have gone.
Yeah, right.
Last couple of years, yeah.
Well, city people don't understand hedgerows.
No, Doreen, on a whole different level and landscape, I spent a number of years on the grasslands of Saskatchewan, and talk about the importance of hedgerows.
Yeah, right.
So I know what you're saying, but that's a really good comment, bringing the map and trying to find that old information about the hedgerows together. That's
Well, there is a file there.
Yeah.
And also birders are very interested in hedgerows.
Well, can we be specific about birds? I see the hedgerows are critical for movement of birds. I want to feel safe. But what about other creatures? I don't. Deer seem to be fearless as far as getting on the roads and off the roads. But do they have? Are they sufficiently mobile so that they can crisscross and find places where they can feed and not get in the way, or are they sort of stuck in a corner? I don't know.
My experience with deer is they can get in and out of any place.
Yeah.
Even if you try to keep them out, they'll get in.
They're pretty adept at getting into our paddock, I must say.
You know, I lived on an acreage there, so I know.
Yeah, the hedgerows are really important for bird life. There's no question about that. But the hedgerows are also really important for the smaller mammals and the meta mammals.
Right.
That's right.
And their ability to move around, and then that's
right.
food for the larger mammals. So and the larger birds. So you know, it all kind of fits together, Farrell.
Well, tree canopy would be another issue too, I guess.
Oh, tree canopy's huge.
Yeah.
So if I can jump in,
Tree canopies.
and back to Bob's point, this is where the OCPs become so critical, and more than just policies, but also in terms of implementation. And also, it's one of the things we're really going to be focused on with Sydney is the action plan. So there's things that will come out of OCPs that require more work. So for example, picking up on this conversation, you know, one of the things that we might want to think of as an action item out of an OCP is that the municipalities work together to establish the wildlife corridors with input from others. I mean, it's those kind of things that you need to kind of formulate and present to the munis, because they probably won't do it on their own.
You might look into what Victoria does about trees, street canopies, regarding Sydney anyway. There is a group in Sydney. Jocelyn knows the group's name. I keep forgetting it, even though I'm on the committee. It's Environment and Habitat. Linda.
I think it's a subcommittee of the Community Association.
It is
now, which is good. We haven't been very active during the pandemic, but I'm glad to see thousands of dollars in Sydney's budget for trees and tree planting. So I think the work that Linda Comber and you and others did has certainly raised the profile, at least of the tree canopy in Sydney and the importance. I think of shorelines as corridors. I think all of our shorelines need a lot more protection than they have now, all around the peninsula.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that interface, Jocelyn, is fundamental, because so many of the creatures go back and forth between the water and the land.
Yeah, they sure do. And the big old trees.
Yeah,
That's right.
That people want to trim and cut down so they can build bigger houses are really important to all kinds of wildlife.
I don't think people realize how much a canopy contributes to health, especially in a small town like Sydney.
Yeah.
You know, the big old trees shade the street.
Yeah.
And they give comfort and shelter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this past heat wave, we didn't have these big trees out here. I don't know what the condo would have been like.
Mm-hmm.
We need to promote forest bathing like the Japanese.
Yeah, right.
Yes, absolutely.
So Bob, let me kind of circle back here. And I think you and I have had this conversation a few times, but and I've heard it from others, I think formulating some real concrete recommendations to the three munis is
right.
going to be really important. Otherwise, this opportunity will get missed. Because I think, as most of you are aware, the same consultant is doing all three OCPs. So it's a bit of a golden opportunity that doesn't come along very often, to make our comments to Modus in the hopes that they will then fold it into their respective OCPs.
It's interesting too, from a Modus point of view, consulting point of view, you talk to the people in Central Saanich, and they say that they're leading the process and Modus is there to help and to support them. I'm not sure what that relationship is like in Sydney. I don't understand the Sydney Modus relationship very well. But in North Saanich, again, this is me, but I think in North Saanich, one of the problems has been it's consultant led. And so you get a presentation, you attend the advisory working group, you get a consultant that speaks. It's a consultant that's making the presentations to staff and council. And so staff are in behind. And so the role Modus has in each of the three municipalities is different. And, you know, my bias is I think it should be more of a staff-led consultant support process than it is in North Saanich. And so it's your comment on Modus is right, Dennis, in that there is an opportunity there. But again, some of that might be framed depending on which municipality that you're in and how Modus is being used. I'm quite disappointed that we don't, in a sense, hear more from staff and what they're thinking in North Saanich. You sit and you hear the presentations from Modus and what they're recommending.
I think that's well recognized by council in North Saanich now, Bob. Certainly in Central Saanich and Sydney, it is staff led, but North Saanich it isn't. They've recognized that's been a mistake.
Yeah.
And now they have to regroup.
Good. Well, I really hope to see how the new reframing will work, because it's got to be like that.
Yeah.
But you're right, Dennis, as well. And one of the things that we've been thinking about as a coalition, we're kind of moving into the public engagement stage. You know, the bioregion has been presented, the vision and the stories out there. Generally, people say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, how can it not be a good idea? But the rubber meets the road in the detail. And so I think having something, as Farrell's suggesting, like a corridor map, and I think having 3 or 4 specific recommendations that we put forward to each of the councils and saying, this is how we're going to measure your contribution or your to the idea or not. I think that's a really good point, Dennis. And we tried that in our document, but I think it's a bit too high level.
So just, Bob, if I can, just share with the folks here. So the OCP for Sydney is going to get launched in a week. And I've cobbled together a OCP working group, and I have volunteered Bob to sit on that group. So his input will be really, really critical in light of this whole conversation, because we will, with Bob, be going through that OCP and finding where the weak spots are and making our comments back to the Sydney Council. So it's kind of getting in at that level. It's really critical.
Can you give me 1 or 2 concrete recommendations for Sydney? Just 2 concrete recommendations.
Well, one for sure, and Jocelyn, I think, can echo this, is that their shoreline environmental design guidelines are extremely weak.
Well, whoever came up with the idea of putting out a floating wharf there and putting hotels and restaurants on it, I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's another thing altogether. But They do, and this is one of the points that I think has been, Sydney staff, to their credit, I think is recognizing that they need to pay more attention to their environmental guidelines. And I'm looking forward to when the draft OCP comes out, that there's stronger language around shoreline protection, which is always a bit of a controversial issue because you've got property owners with their particular interests, and it doesn't always jive with the interests around preserving shoreline. Right, Jocelyn?
Right. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
That's why Roberts Bay residents is trying to work as closely as we can with all the property owners.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not. No, no, they'll, yeah, it is, it's kind of motherhood and apple pie, and we all agree until it actually affects your property.
So back to your point, Bob,
Understandable.
as somebody, as you all know, that I work with OCPs every day. If it's not something that's in the OCP that I have to do, I probably am not going to. So if the design guidelines for the shoreline don't say anything about preserving the shoreline, I'm not going to.
Oh, gee.
Well, because there's nothing that makes me do it, and the developers are going to say, show me where it says I have to do that. So it's absolutely critical that those shoreline and habitat guidelines have some teeth to them.
It's kind of similar, you know, every cabinet minister now in federal provincial government, they get their mandate letter. And you sit down with them and you say, oh, I'd like you to do blah, blah, blah. And whatever his or her name would be, oh, I'd love to do that, but it's not in my mandate letter. You know, like, give me a break.
Okay, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but sorry, Jocelyn.
Oh, I was going to say maybe we should write some mandate letters ourselves.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, there was a note, Dennis, saying you had extended and given us unlimited minutes. I saw a pop that said that.
Yeah.
How did I do that?
No, you probably got the bill.
Great.
No, if we were going to be cut off, we would have been cut off 7 or 8 minutes ago. So,
Yeah.
I think we're fine for a few minutes, but you know, this has been very, I mean, I've enjoyed making the presentation, and the discussion's been really worthwhile, because there have been some of these thoughts have been kind of messing around in my head for the last few weeks, and it's really helped me kind of gel them.
Good.
I like Jocelyn's suggestion of drafting mandate letters, maybe even somewhat tongue in cheek, and getting them out there. So that would be an indirect way of putting out a wish list that might not seem so threatening, might even be funny in places, and who knows, people might actually pay attention to it.
I support that, Farrell, and I would suggest the participating groups that are in the coalition, Bob, that you reach out to them and get each one of them to submit, you know, a mandate letter, even if it's in jest, which is, you know.
But just a reminder, folks, if it's not in the OCP, I'm not doing it. So,
Well, we do have some input though now, don't we?
but at the end of the day, when the thing is adopted and now I am dealing with the OCP, I'm only dealing with what's in the OCP, and something sort of extraneous to that is a nice to have, but I'm not going to pay attention to it, to be perfectly honest. So I'm really underscoring and reiterating how critical the requirements and directions in the OCP is, because that is my mandate, that is my marching orders.
Right, I understand you perfectly. I would think the audience for these I should say not too serious, but serious mandate letters would not be you, would not necessarily be councils even. It would be the general public if they went out somehow. People saw what we were sort of talking about in terms of mandate letters to the municipalities, or however we would phrase them. It would be kind of a way of putting our wish list forward and making it more public and, you know, maybe a little more fun than the kind of dry stuff we see in official reports.
I
And
think
this-
I think a wish list could probably involve some concrete recommendations.
Yeah.
That
Of
they could
course.
take note of and maybe work on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know everyone's going to be working on the OCP, but mandate letters from even our small tree committee, you know, a committee underneath under our umbrella would be of use.
Yeah.
Slightly more than an individual wish list.
The other place it fits is kind of into the next phase, because starting August to September, we're starting elections and people will be switching heads. Will I run? Will I not run? If I am going to run, what's my platform? And all this kind of stuff. And so I think that there's some way that maybe we could, we can't play politics, but we can state what we believe is really, really important. And we could put that out there. And we can't say vote Betty rather than Steve,
No.
but we can say, when you're approaching the ballot box and you're going to make your tick, these are 3 or 4 things you should be thinking about.
Can I ask, I've been wondering whether the community association is thinking of holding another all candidates meeting. I think we did it very effectively at the last Sydney, during the last Sydney election. And as we were looking at that then, nobody else was doing a public all candidates meeting. The chamber wasn't, and there just didn't seem to be anybody else except the community association. It's a big undertaking, but I do, it's been on my mind. I think it was very effective, and I'm hoping that the community association can do it again. And if I can help in any way.
I agree.
do that.
A lot of it will depend, Jocelyn, whether we're doing it like this or we're in a
Yeah.
room. And if we're doing it like this, you know, that's something we're gonna have to get our heads
That's
around. And
true.
if we're doing it in a room, that may have its own constraints. So, yeah, we've even been thinking about, like, can we start doing our regular membership meetings in person? And that's something that the board's going to have to start talking about now that things are lightening up again. But I think your comment is a really good one, especially this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe adding to that, Jocelyn, I think it's a great would even having a question within that if we do hold an all candidates, a question directly to this platform of the coalitions presenting to see what kind of response they get. But to Dennis's point, certainly within Sydney, the OCP is going to be tucked away by that time. So if we're going to have any impact on bringing this kind of information to the OCP, it's on the review, which, as Dennis has pointed out, is coming up in the next month. We
Wow.
really have to hammer home that we'd like to see some changes to that, if perchance there's nothing in there relative to some of these the perception or direction we want to go with the coalition.
Or if it needs to be strengthened.
Mhm.
Now, we are the coalition, aren't we, right now? The group that's here. We can come up with, I'm really firm on recommendations. It's all right to talk about it, but what are the steps? Number 1 step, number 2, number 3. We've only got a week really to, to prepare ourselves and speak as one, not 5 or 6 different people. Like the main thing I see here is shorelines and connectivity. Those are 2 important things. What are we going to ask them to do about it?
Mhm.
What should they do about it? Those 2 things. Like the shoreline, I was appalled at the plans in Sydney. Simply appalled that businessmen could go ahead that far.
And
Oh, the wharf.
both
The wharf.
both shoreline and conductivity are really affected by the changing climate. So that context is really, really important, Doreen. That's really a good point.
Well, can we have a sort of one mandate to present that can become a, you know, a call for everybody? Climate change is a big word.
But that's what you'll be looking for, isn't it, Dennis? When you actually see the document, you'll be looking at, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you'll be looking basically to see where are the 2, 3, or 4 pinch points here that we might be able to actually influence
And push for. Yeah.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to see, because we're going through this in Colwood, this very issue because we have a quite a major shoreline. People think we're in Langford, but Colwood actually has an extensive waterfront. And we're going through a very intensive process right now about shoreline preservation relative to sea level rise, relative to climate change. And believe me, it is a massive, massive undertaking. But one thing I'm going to be looking for in the Sydney OCP is how are they knitting shoreline preservation, sea level rise, climate change, and all the other things that I think Jocelyn and your group are probably wrestling with. Like, how do those all get boxed up? And it's not easy.
No, it's not.
And the OCP, and this is I think people think sometimes the OCP is the you know, it's the be all and end all, and it's not. It simply sets the stage for, and there's nothing wrong with saying, yes, we recognize these things and there's more work that needs to be done. And so one of the things the SCA is going to be really pushing for is and I think this is back to what Doreen's talking about, is the things that need to come out of the OCP as action items.
Right.
Yeah, I think before the elections, both Central Saanich and Sydney's OCPs will be wrapped up if everything goes according to plan. North Saanich is going to have a draft that they'll be giving to the new council. You know, you're right, Dennis, shake your head. But anyway, so that's kind of, so the situation's different with the two of them. But the election in October could be more critical for North Saanich than it is for the other two. I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, and to that point, Bob, at least probably half of the North Saanich Council will be not running again.
Yeah.
That's kind of the word I'm getting.
Yeah.
But the North Saanich OCP they'll be moving ahead with the environmental components, just the housing stuff that's been parked. So there's no reason why we can't.
Housing, no, they've changed it. It's the whole shooting match again.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
they split it.
It's the whole shooting match again. They took it to, you know, back and forth. Anyway, the council decision last week was to package the whole thing up, move forward.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, that changes things.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a final note before I think we wrap up. This went way better than I thought. There was not a lot of hiccups. So thanks to all of you for your patience. One thing to look forward to is I am going to be approaching Sydney to do a presentation of their draft OCP with a format like this, assuming that we won't be able to get in a room together. So stay tuned, look for another announcement out there for a presentation of the draft OCP, hopefully sometime in March.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Okay.
Thanks,
Hey.
everybody.
Yeah. Any last words, Bob, before I wrap it up?
No, it's been good. Thank you very much for the chance to think out loud. And as you say, a lot of the conversations been kind of fitting in with what's been bouncing around in my head anyway. So the timing's been really good. I'll just say in closing, if you go to the Friends of Show Harbor website, if you're interested, we've got 2 talks next week. Tuesday night, there's a talk about illegal moorage and abandoned boats, and the Coast Guard and the CRD are speaking. And that could be a really interesting talk because that's certainly a peninsula-wide issue. And then on Thursday night, Farrell's put together just a really interesting panel and conversation about why do we care where we live?